You tell a friend something you have not told anyone in a long time. They listen and the conversation goes well, but a few hours later, one thought keeps circling in your mind: I said too much. So, why do you feel embarrassed for opening up when nothing actually went wrong? Maybe you really did cross a line, or maybe you simply allowed someone to see you more closely than usual. The problem is that after the conversation ends, those two situations can feel almost exactly the same. And this does not happen only when you reveal a huge secret. Sometimes a coworker asks how you are doing. Instead of giving your usual "I'm fine," you admit that things have been difficult. It feels good in the moment. At home, you begin wondering what they think of you now. Sometimes a conversation with someone new becomes deeper than expected. It feels as if you have made a real connection. The next morning, you feel as if you gave away too much of yourself. And sometimes you send a long voice message and feel relieved. When the reply takes longer than expected, you begin replaying every sentence. What if they misunderstood me? Do they think I'm weak now? What if they tell someone else? This does not mean you tell everyone everything. You may be very careful about who knows what, keeping a clear boundary between your private life and the version other people see. So when you truly open up to someone, you are not only sharing information, you are allowing them to see a part of you that you normally keep to yourself. During the conversation, that closeness may feel safe. Once you are alone, you realize that you cannot take that part back. So is this a problem? Most of the time, no. Feeling exposed for a while after sharing something important is understandable. That feeling alone does not prove that you made a mistake. But if you panic after every honest conversation, send long explanations, or avoid getting close to anyone, the pattern may be worth noticing, because at that point, privacy may not be the only thing stopping you. The discomfort of being genuinely seen may be part of it too. Telling someone something personal can feel like sending a message with no undo button. Before you say it, the information belongs completely to you. You decide how much to reveal, which words to use, and which parts to keep hidden. After you say it, the same information exists in someone else's mind. You cannot pull it back. You cannot fully control how they interpret it or how it changes the way they see you. That may be where the first wave of discomfort begins. Maybe you did not say anything wrong, but you did give up some control over what you said. You may notice this less while the conversation is happening. You can hear the other person's voice, see their face, and receive their reaction immediately. Being listened to can feel relieving. If they share something personal too, the distance between you may become smaller. In that moment, opening up feels right. Timing can matter too. A late-night conversation, an intense day together, or the other person sharing something private first may make it easier to discuss things you normally keep closed. That does not mean you lost control. Trust may simply have felt stronger than the risk of sharing. Then the moment ends. You go home, the warmth of the conversation fades, and you remember the boundaries you usually protect. Your mind compares the decision you made while connected with the one you would make now alone. The version of me sitting here now would never have said that, you think. But sitting alone, you no longer feel that trust and closeness as strongly. So regret afterward does not automatically prove that your earlier decision was wrong. Sometimes the emotional setting has simply changed. Once the conversation is over, the reassuring signals disappear too. You no longer see the other person's face. You see your own predictions instead. Maybe they were only being polite. Maybe what I said made them uncomfortable. Maybe they did not show it, but they see me differently now. These thoughts can feel like answers, but most of them are only guesses filling in the empty spaces, because your mind cannot control the outcome. It begins examining the conversation again. It enlarges one brief pause. It gives a new meaning to an ordinary facial expression. It removes one sentence from the rest of the conversation and places it in front of you again and again. The moment that felt safe while it was happening can begin to look dangerous a few hours later. There's another less visible shift happening here. While you are talking, your goal is to be understood. Afterward, your goal may change to protecting yourself. At first, you think, someone finally understands me. Later, you think, what do they know about me now? The conversation has not changed. What has changed is the place from which you are looking at it. Think about the last time you told someone something truly personal. What exactly made you uncomfortable afterward? Did you reveal something inappropriate? Did you share a secret that belonged to someone else? Did you trust someone who had not earned that trust? Or did you simply show a side of yourself that you do not normally show? Those are not the same thing. You may truly have crossed a boundary. The time or place may have been wrong, the person unsafe, or the information not yours alone to share. Then the discomfort may point to something real. But sometimes there was no such mistake. The other person listened, did not dismiss what you said, and allowed the conversation to end normally. Here is the unexpected part. Feeling exposed does not prove that you opened up to the wrong person. Personal sharing can sometimes create more closeness between people. When you reveal something real about yourself, the other person may like you more, not less. But closeness brings a small risk along with the comfort. The other person's opinion now matters more to you. Being misunderstood by a stranger can feel uncomfortable. Being misunderstood by someone you value can feel like a much greater threat. That is why the more meaningful a conversation was, the stronger the embarrassment afterward can sometimes become. Strangely, that embarrassment may push you to repair a conversation that was never broken. You open your phone and type, "Sorry, I talked a little too much yesterday." Then you add another message explaining why you said those things. The other person may have seen the conversation as completely normal, but your anxious explanation can give the moment a new weight. In other words, the message you send to feel less awkward may leave you with even more to analyze. So what can you do in that moment? Go back to the conversation at the beginning. You told your friend something you had been holding inside for a long time. They listened and did not react badly. Now you are lying in bed thinking, "I said too much." Do not rush to repair the conversation. First, name what is actually happening. "I feel exposed because I cannot take back what I said." Then separate what you know from what you are predicting. Here is what you know. Your friend listened. They did not make fun of you. They continued the conversation normally. What you are predicting is that they now think you are weak, that they will pull away, or that they will tell someone else. Those things are possible, but do you have any evidence for them right now? Next, ask whether you crossed a real boundary. If you did not reveal someone else's secret, trust an unsafe person, or see clear discomfort, there may be no mistake requiring an immediate apology. Wait before explaining. Notice how the person behaves next time. You may find that the relationship changed far less than it did in your imagination. And if you truly crossed a boundary, you do not need a long defense. A short, clear sentence may be enough. "I realized I shared a little more than I intended yesterday. I'd like that to stay between us." That way, instead of trying to explain away your embarrassment, you communicate what you actually need. Now return to the moment when the conversation ended. Your friend listened. You showed a part of yourself that you normally protect. When you got home, your mind searched for a way to unsend the message. But maybe there was no mistake to undo. Maybe you simply allowed someone to truly know you. Not every personal message was sent to the wrong person. Sometimes you search for the undo button, not because you said too much, but because for the first time you were truly seen.